Hey there, people in the podcast world. This is Rob Beller doing a quick intro to something experimental and different, entirely different, that we did this year right before PLRB began. We decided that we would take advantage of the fact that there was maybe some people who were lingering around waiting for the conference to start. So we reached out to several of our customers and contacts on the carrier side to see if they would be interested in joining us for a roundtable to discuss the future of claims. The operational title of our little roundtable was Claims 2024. So in other words, what will claims be like 5 years from now? So we invited Dan Moore, Senior Vice President of QBE, John Hall from Worley, Scott Sprague from Westfield, Pat Sinnard from Great American, Mick Zondory from Kemper, Jill Thomas from Nat Gen Lender Services, and Bo Helms from Shelter, and asked them to sit around a table with Matt Fatheree and myself to talk about the future of claims. It was a terrific experience. It was experimental, but it was really interesting. And I think that many of you in our audience will find it interesting to hear the perspectives and the ideas and the different directions that the conversation went in, which were not only encouraging to me, but also surprising at times. So let's just jump right in and listen to our special PLRB episode, a roundtable on claims 2024. Hi from Indianapolis, Indiana. We're here at the JW Marriott at the 2019 PLRB conference, and I'm sitting at the table with a whole bunch of really smart senior claims executives, and we're here today to talk about claims 2024, the future of claims, the future of claims disruption, where it's going, what's going on, and we have an esteemed panel, if I say so myself. And I'm sitting here today with Matt Fatheree, our CEO. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Matt. And so we're just going to go around the table, and you'll just have to close your eyes and imagine these people. But I'll start with myself. I'm Rob Beller from Fourseventy.
Great. I'm Dan Moore. I'm with QBE.
And what do you do at QB?
I am the head of operations, which includes claims operations as well as underwriting support operations and corporate operations.
Great.
I'm Scott Sprague. I'm with Westfield Insurance, and I've been with Westfield Insurance about 23 years now. I'm a property leader.
So I'm Pat Sinnard. I'm with Great American Insurance. I've been with Great American 25 years now. I am claim manager, operations manager for our Cincinnati office.
Jill Thomas, and I work for National General, the Lender Services Division, and I manage the claims for any mortgage-placed insurance.
John Hall with Audit Services Incorporated, a Worley company. I've been with ASI, will be 20 years this November, so it's been quite a career.
Mick Zondory. I'm with Kemper Preferred. Been there for about 1.5 years now, and I'm over all of home and auto claims.
I'm Bo Helms. I'm with Shelter Insurance. I've been with Shelter for about 16 years. I manage the catastrophe side of our company along with the property department.
And I'm Matt Fatheree, and I'm the CEO of Fourseventy, and I've been doing this way too long. Especially with you, Rob.
What a nice thing to say, Matt. Okay, we're just going to jump into this, and our goal today is to have a conversation and talk about the future of claims. And so I'll just put something out on the table, and we'll just go from there. So let's talk about within your own organizations. We don't have to talk about anything specifically. Or any names specifically, but what are some of the things that are having impact in your organization now, technologically, both specifically and generally, on the claims process?
Well, yeah, technology obviously is playing an increasingly bigger role, not just in the insurance industry, but over across industries, and insurance is no different. Claims, I guess, for us is the same. We're seeing increases in the work that we're doing around digitization. So how do we think about creating a digital experience, either through some of the interactions we have with policyholders or ways in which we deliver the claim service. So that's certainly a technology trend that we're seeing drive a lot of our interest and activity. And I guess the other one that I'll put out on the table is data. We're seeing a ton of technology work around data, whether it's data collection, data analytics, and how do we use the data to be more thoughtful or more insightful into the decisions that we make. And I think insurance and claims in particular has a really long history of being data rich. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to mine that, and we're still, I think, at the infancy of scratching the surface on that. So those are two of the trends that we're seeing from a technology standpoint, driving a lot of interest and activity.
John, you produce a lot of data in your company, yes?
That's right. Well, a ton of data, and it's making a huge impact on what we do. And on the independent side, at a table full of insurance carriers, what's really driving the change in our business is virtualization. Everything that we're working on is how to find the right skill set of labor to take us into 2024. Our industry's changed a lot just in the talent that's available. We've seen a lot of aging out of really good talent, and in order to fulfill the needs of carriers going forward, we have to rely on technology to replace that gap. So it's not a question of if; it's a question of how and how fast. We don't have a choice.
Yeah, and I'll come in on our side on the independent. I think it's interesting on our side because I think you and I both feel like the entire process can't be automated. So there's skill set in there that we're going to need experience-wise, and finding the automation and the process in between now seems to be, I know, on our forefront. We've gone through the technology hunt. We're looking now about process and where to plug in the right automation and AI kind of in between to keep the talent in front of us, right? It's tough to find talent nowadays, at least on our side. Are y'all feeling any of that on y'all's side with everything going on?
Yeah, right now the job market in our area, it's very tight. Even to find the kids coming out of college, getting people into the insurance industry is a struggle.
More so than it ever has been, really, hasn't it?
I agree. The time to find folks, it's going on a month to 2 months to find quality candidates coming in your door when you're interviewing these days.
Mm-hmm. Is that unusual?
It has been unusual. In our area, there was other carriers that you're able to swap out with, it seems like, in years past. Folks would jump around, and that's kind of slowed down. It's a very competitive market right now for folks in our industry, I believe.
Who at the table has started to see some of these technologies start to seep into their operations, using new things, new tools, new companies, InsureTech stuff? Anybody?
So from a technology standpoint, where we've seen the benefit is on the front end of claims, getting claims into the system, assigned to an adjuster, assigned to a independent appraiser to go out and look at them. In years past, it was all manual process, probably touched by two or three different people in the process, and that's all being streamlined on our end right now, and trying to get beyond that now onto the next level of how do we streamline that next level.
I'd agree. I would say that we've spent a lot of time looking at the first notice of loss piece, and then how do you take the technology that's out there to match up the right claim with the right person and make sure you're doing it quickly, so then we can get to work on the claim, and matching them up not only with the right adjuster but also with the right vendor partner. So from the insured standpoint, they just want to see action, no delays, and certainly you touched on the manual process. It was all manual, and now we're looking for ways to automate as much as we can.
So on the independent side, we've seen some carriers that are doing some neat things with chat, online chat, where it's actually AI that's communicating with the actual insured. That's big for us because it's triaging those claims on the front end and trying to get the right claim to a desk adjuster as fast as possible. The technology is not there yet. It's getting close, but it's not there where it's seamless because you're dealing with a human, artificial intelligence dealing with a human who is not always as predictable as we think they should be. And so that's where the rub is right now, but it will get there in the next few years, I believe.
Yeah, so it's a great example, John. That is something that we're currently doing today. We have an AI assisted chat bot that is back-ended by people. It's called TellQBE, right? Where it's an opportunity for individuals to engage with their claim professional via this SMS chat capability. And I think it creates. It's not. We're not forcing people to use chat, but sometimes it's more convenient to use an SMS chat messaging bot. Sometimes it's more convenient to make a phone call. There's different purposes, and so we're looking to create options for customers to be able to engage in that way. Where the AI on that particular piece comes in is certain questions. Some of the questions can be answered right based on data that's available in the claim. Not all of it, and I think to your point, the maturity is still up there. For it to be truly all end-to-end automated, we're a ways away from technology, and we may not even from a strategic standpoint ever want to get to that full place for all of our claims, but it does create this opportunity for some of those quick questions to be answered by the AI 24/7, and then also to create a new channel for customers to interact with. So that's one of the things we're looking at. Virtualization you mentioned earlier is another one that we've been spending a lot of time on. Is how do we engage the claim the policyholder earlier in the process? So whether it's with cameras, videos, how do we think about being more cutting down that telephone tag cycle time of making an assignment, confirming appointment times, all that stuff drives a lot of time into the cycle time and customer frustration, right? And so how do we cut some of that out using some virtualization techniques and as well as some crowdsourcing type techniques, right? So some ways to think about that equation.
It's one of the areas that that we hear that carriers struggle with all the time is in that F&OL space, and it's getting the right information from the claimant up front so you can triage the claim correctly. So technology in that area would really advance our industry in a long way, would help all of us, even in the field. I mean, that's one of the working for a company now that does a lot of field work. It's one of the issues now is you get very poor first notice of loss information.
Definitely.
And so the more information is key to the entire claims process.
Absolutely.
Is that where you're using a bot? Is it FNOL?
So right now, the current use is just post FNOL. So when they report the loss, we offer them the opportunity to receive the first text. So there's a lot of regulation and privacy issues around texting, right? And so there's you need to be thoughtful about that from a regulatory standpoint. So one of the things we've done is in order to kind of maintain that protection is to actually get the consent during the FNOL process, at which point we then launch out the bot. Now, that said, one of the use cases that's on our roadmap is to basically create the question set that will pull the data from someone who's interacting in that way so that we can be a little more upfront on it. We're not there yet. Candidly, we're still now more post-report and how do we interact with folks. But it just became apparent to us. We had a very large commercial fire loss. Our GA was trying to get a hold of the property manager. The mailbox was full, and you can imagine if somebody's got a really, really large loss and they're the property manager, they probably got a lot of people trying to get a hold of them, right? And so they're having a real hard time getting a hold of them. And I remember I was in the Chicago office talking to her, and she said, I pulled out my personal cell phone, I texted the number, I got a response back in 1 minute, and we connected and we got the thing. And she'd been leaving voicemail messages trying to get a hold of her for 2 days on the phone. And so that was just one of those instant thoughts. We got to create more channels for people to communicate and support.
Are you guys hearing in your organizations from your leadership, from your senior leadership, what are we doing on this? What's going on? What are we trying? What are we using? Is there pressure coming from above to evolve and change and use new tools?
The pressure from above for us is honestly, there's so much competition out there that on the price side, we're not going to be able to get the price on the premium. So we have to figure out ways to become more efficient within our own operations. And that efficiency is created through technology. How can we create that efficiency within our organization through technology? That's where our pressure is coming from.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
That's 100% true on the IA side as well. I mean, that pressure rolls all the way. Not to say it rolls downhill, but I don't know how to better characterize it.
The laws of plumbing still apply.
The laws of plumbing still apply. That's 100% right. So
I think you're correct, John.
So as I think it's key for organizations like Fourseventy and like Worley to figure out ways to process claims more efficiently, faster, and ultimately more cost effectively. I mean, that's the driver, because like you said, there's such pressures on premiums are not going up. I mean, that's what we've got to do. We have a finite box that we're all in, and we've got to work within that.
When you think about where some of the challenge is, I definitely agree. The expense and efficiency side. There's customer choice, obviously, in services driving a lot of that. But even you'll think for the carriers who are obviously when we're having our AM Best conversations, AM Best has recently come out and said innovation is it's always been around financial strength and strategic alignment and things like that. But AM Best has now come out and formally put out there that your innovation efforts will be part and parcel of how they rate your strength, right? And so that's a market shift, right, in terms of how insurance carriers are being rated and thought about, and so puts, I think, a different strategic lens on that challenge for carriers and for participants to be thinking about how do they now leverage that innovation as part of their ability to be a sustainable enterprise going forward. And I think that's a recognition on the part of AM Best that innovation will be necessary for entities to be a viable concern for the long term. Otherwise, they wouldn't put that out there, right? So it's now not just enough to be financially secure, but you've got to be thinking about your future in an innovative way. And so I would just put that out there to you as one of those examples that's driving conversation at the C-suite for us, and I think it's driving conversation at the strategic levels across a lot of the organizations in the industry.
We've talked about the front end of the claims process and the F&OL and stuff. Let's talk about the customer experience on site, the inspection process. There's a lot of technology driving that when we talk about drones, aerial imagery, everything that's going on there. So what's being used now? What do you guys see over the next few years, 5 years? What do you think is going to stick? There's a lot of noise out there right now, right?
Well, I think the days of breaking out the tape measure on every roof claim that you have are over. I think everyone recognizes the value in aerial imagery and when it plays so well with the estimating programs that are out there, and being able to drop those files into Symbility or into Xactimate or whoever you're using and having an estimate there for you. I think it's a no-brainer from a safety perspective, from an efficiency perspective, and from a productivity perspective. So,
how many tape measures I've broken a year? Trying to flip it over the ridge to the other side. So
Because they always give you the dumb end of it.
well, that is true. It is true. So. Yeah, I would agree. I think the aerial imagery has been a game changer. Of course, the aerial's been out for a while. Drones certainly hit us. Seemed like 12, 18 months ago, that was kind of the hot thing. Seems to us it's not as prevalent anymore, but we were having the conversation the other day that we need to circle back around and look, because these companies we've tested, it's been about a year. We need to go back and see what's happening. There's more competition. Have y'all had any experience with drones, and what does the future hold for them?
I'll jump in. So, I think it was 5 years ago, I was on a committee to, go in and really observe the efficacy of using drones. And that's about the time that the federal government got involved, and then all bets were off. And that was kind of like the shiny red button of the day, right?
Right.
It hasn't really panned out so well for the staff adjusters. Now, I know that engineering firms and some IA firms have licensed pilots and whatnot, but the drone thing is kind of, I believe, sort of been sidestepped by some of these other technologies. I don't know if we talk about any of the companies, and Hover's one of them.
Sure.
Where, to me, it's to enable the customer engagement that those technologies allow, it does a number of things. It sort of lowers the guard from insureds. It enables us to garner some rapport by just engaging with them and enabling them to be part of that claims process. And to me, that's paying off in bigger dividends than drones ever will.
Right.
And the accuracy of those products seems to be pretty sound too.
So not just the data that you get, but engaging the customer as a positive, that people actually want to be involved.
Yeah, because ultimately, I mean, we're talking about InsureTech and the new technologies that are coming. You had asked, where is this all going? And ultimately, and you also asked, are we having pressure from up above, to use these new technologies?
Yeah.
The pressure really is kind of an indirect pressure, right? It's do more with less. So we're kind of forced into this new technology, and some of them are pretty great.
Interesting.
But at the end of the day, I think everybody is running headlong into the wind at these new technologies because they see everybody else looking at, salivating over the same stuff. But as an industry, we're all a little bit gun shy because everybody knows that there's a human element that can't be lost in this. And so we're trying to strike a balance. We're in that in-between period where we're kind of feeling each other out as companies and as an industry. And I believe the structures of the policies are going to have to change. Inevitably, the language is going to have to change to enable some of the algorithms so that they can ultimately get where they want to go in the brave new world. But that might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here.
Well, yeah, simple things like having the policy pre-authorize text use, right? To decide the time.
There you go.
I've heard a lot of talk about that at the time you buy your policy. Have them sign up, say in the event you have a claim,
we will communicate this way, right?
You opt in or opt out,
Absolutely.
and then that'd be part of your claim file. That would be a huge advance. So there's some challenges with technology too, though. You can talk about. I mean, so we've been engaged in a lot of photo estimating on the auto side. Consumers are not the best picture takers, even with really advanced technology that would guide you through, how to do it. So, an example of, in the wintertime in Detroit, in the middle of, trying to take a picture of a damaged car that has, 4 inches of frozen ice slush on it, is not a great solution. It doesn't. I mean, it's tough. Or when they get home from work and it's already dark outside and they're taking pictures in the dark, those not that valuable. So there's a lot of challenges that tech may or may not be able to overcome. And again, it's being engaged with that consumer. It's a key piece of it.
We have that just with non-adjuster inspectors, right? Like there's services out there. I'll just name one. When we go look, where you have non-insurance people getting involved in gathering data for a claim, and they're taking pictures of, like what you said, that might not be right on target. And
they're either not in that specific example, but even consumers either they're 2 inches away from the damage, or they're 2 miles away from the damage. Not that it. And
they don't have an insurance eye. They're not honing in on what we need to see to make a right call, an estimate.
You can relate on the IAA side. It's when you're teaching an entry level adjuster on the IAA side of auto or property, one of the first things you have to teach them is how to appropriately take photographs of a home or car. It's not intuitive, and the consumer struggles with that. But the next big area, you mentioned the roofing. You talked about drones. But the other big piece is, and I think everybody's trying to figure this out right now, and there's some products that are out there that may be coming, is the interior measurements on homes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, roofing seems to be, we've kind of settled in on aerial imagery. Drones are, drones might be a better fit for catastrophic work versus a day claim opportunity when you have multiple properties on the same street, those kind of things, or services like think of an eagle view with a drone that goes in and surveys the whole area, where we would buy, each carrier would buy their property address, that drone footage right after an event. But you can't really do that on a day claim as much. But if someone can crack the interior measurements, using a smartphone type application, I think that'll be the next big leap in virtualization.
And there's some out there. They're not there yet.
Yeah,
but I mean, you look at day claims, and probably 50% are interior water losses, right? And I mean, we're losing as much on measurements and time and stuff like that, estimating. I mean, it's not easy to estimate the interiors of home. It's not easy to QA stuff from our desks, because we don't have good pictures, right? We can't see every angle to make sure the adjuster has that. So yeah, I think that's a big missing piece right now. And it's difficult the way homes are built. I mean, I get it. We've had them in our office and shown us. And when you get these open concepts and they've got all these vaulted ceilings, I mean, they're just having trouble. Now, I think they'll get it.
They'll get there, right?
But it's a big opportunity. It's a big space.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably one of the challenges I see going forward as we talk about virtual adjusting and desk adjusting. And I think we all see the movement of claims more from the field to the inside using the technologies that we have. But I would say that we have to get good at getting those photographs and the video, and then having some confidence to take a little risk and writing up those estimates, but also being able to make sure we're paying what we owe too. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. And so that's the direction I see us moving, but I also see it as a pretty big challenge before we're confident to say, yes, we can do it this way.
Yeah, one of the big drawbacks in the virtualization space, if you underpay a consumer for a claim, so you write an initial estimate, and we understand that it's an estimate and that the estimates have variability, but the consumers don't always understand that. So you write an estimate and it's X dollars, and the consumer then brings in a general contractor. They take their car to their collision repair center, and the repair is much, much different than that estimate. The consumer sometimes they're a little skeptical about insurance as a whole to start with.
Right.
So you set you can create a negative customer experience if you're not very careful and your quality is not there and you're not making sure that you're setting that expectation with the consumer, that you've written for what's visible, those types of things. And again, that comes back to staffing, because having the right staff in place that can communicate that expectation and have that interaction with the consumer is key to make it all work. They've got to represent your company the way that you want to be represented.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, on the technology side of the house, I'm reminded. So, in the late '90s and early 2000, I did a lot of .com work, right? Pre me in the insurance industry, and a lot of those concepts, candidly, didn't survive 2001, right? And yet now in 2019, a lot of those concepts that died are now thriving unicorn businesses, right? North of $1 billion in valuation. And so I think one of the things to recognize will be how we think about technology today will be evolving over the next few years, and what maybe doesn't work today because we have some challenges. And one of the things, regulatory restriction around line of sight for drone usage to me is an obvious example that once that goes away, that changes the game on aerial imagery from drones in a really remarkable way. And I think it ultimately will go away. Mm-hmm. Does it go away tomorrow? Probably not.
No, but it's coming.
But it goes away, right? I think, and so how that changes over the what works today may not, or what works today may not work in 20 years. What doesn't work today may work in 20 years, and so there's always this kind of continual challenge to find out what is and isn't and working, and I think a challenge to all the participants in the industry to go back to what is the core problem that's trying to be solved, right? And when you go back to what the core problem is, there's many ways to think about that. If I think somebody said you were rushing into the industry to see what sticks, and everybody's kind of doing it because a lot of other people are doing it. That is a relatively poor reason to be engaging in technology, right? It's really more around, are you clear on what your business problem is? Are you clear on how the technology addresses that core problem? And then even if the technology isn't quite ready to solve that problem, you're learning and growing along that way, but you've rooted yourself in a core business problem, and at some point that comes to fruition. So
I think it, in my world, in the lender services world, it poses a different challenge than what you guys are describing, right? Just because I think you can have all the technology, you can have all of these things, but our insured is the lender, so therefore they're very risk averse. So you have 2 feet in each you're in each world. Exactly. And I think that technology will tell us when we start to go through some litigation on this new technology, that will be the game changer for us in the lender services world. Is how does this pan out in the courts? What does it dictate? Your litigious states like Florida, what's going to happen, right?
Definitely. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of the decisions that people are using it for today, us included, are more on the buying it side versus the more critical aspect of it, right? And so it's almost as, I think you're right around its growth really will depend on how some of this gets pressure tested. I mean, at the same time, I think it's easy for us to, John, you talked about, the claim comes in and on an automated and it comes out as more, right? You also forget, I got a lot of rewrites on people claims too, right? So, I mean, everybody thinks, oh, well, a person doesn't make a mistake. No, people have rewrites too, and I got underwritten claims when I got an experienced person out there. But Joe, I think you're spot on. There is still a lot of unpressure tested litigation that's yet to happen over the next little while for some of this technology. And the safe place to play is on buying the claim, but the more critical aspect is where that pressure test will come into play.
I mean, I think it's safe to say we're kind of in a technology gold rush right now, and everybody's kind of racing down that to see what's there, and some people are not ready yet, right? And it's a little rocky sometimes.
Yeah. So who makes money in the gold rush, right?
Yeah,
Levi Strauss and the suppliers.
That's right.
It's not the guys doing the work.
No, it's not.
It's the insurance. The guys who are getting some VC money and startups and walking away with their stocks. But no, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. It's interesting to think what's going on, and I mean, I think about it because of what we do, but think of how your jobs are going to change in the next 1, 2, 3 years. Everybody around this table with what's being introduced and what we're going to look like and evolve, the way we manage, who we hire, it's going to be a lot different. I mean, is anybody giving any kind of thought to that and have any thoughts on how your job's going to change? I mean, I'm in more technology meetings now than I am staffing meetings. We're looking at data more than ever. I mean, I feel more like I'm a statistician sometimes than I am a corporate officer trying to do that. I mean, we're looking down different segments of business and lines of businesses and stuff it's super intriguing. But I mean, my job has changed in the last year.
The job isn't really going to change that much. Yeah, we're in more meetings that are around technologies. We're constantly looking for, again, that shiny red button, hoping that, when you press it, something doesn't blow up. But at the end of the day, again, it's really still, we are really in this in-between period. Trying to keep your arms around not just the costs and the expense, because a lot of these technologies some of them are cost prohibitive, right? It just doesn't even make sense to utilize them. But the challenge really, and I know this is kind of consistent through a lot of the carriers, the challenge really is keeping the actuaries and the underwriting departments and the claims departments married, and that data tends to get bifurcated between, claims and actuary, right? So keeping that connective tissue between those departments and understanding, okay, is this shiny red button really paying out at the end in dividends that are multiple dividends, i.e. indemnity, right? So ultimately, that's always been the challenge is it actuarially sound, right? And we always get pushback from the actuaries. Well, the book of business changed. It wasn't really what you did. That's changing now. So the technology is really enabling us now to show, because of the data that we have, that yes, it is what we're doing here in claims. It is this new technology, and it is improving our claim outcome.
So you think the job doesn't change much?
Well, it does become more of, we are doing more analytics. I believe as time goes on, for me anyway, it becomes, somebody said earlier about training people and trying to keep people interested, and now the millennial generation, the generations to follow them. I keep looking at article after article, and I'm feeling it myself, and it's like, the technology's great. Algorithms are cool and bots are neat, but at the end of the day, I got to have somebody with a pulse that knows what they're doing, and there's a lack of interest. So my job I see moving forward is how do I get, a generation that knows nothing about insurance. They don't care about it. It sounds like a boring subject. How do I get them interested, and how do you make the job more dynamic for them?
Motivate the workforce.
And then keep them. So the retention is another thing. And we'll no sooner train somebody and we're really excited about them, and then they just lose interest. And that's foreign to my generation, probably others. So to me, that's where my challenge is going to be.
So I think the way it's going to change in our industry and insurance adjustment is you're going to have a lot more people making decisions versus doing administrative type work. I personally had my car towed. I was able to download an app, take pictures of what they needed on the app, upload what's going on. I had a tow truck driver in my driveway in about a half hour, 45 minutes. I never talked to anybody. All that administrative work, all that, back and forth, it was all gone. It was all streamlined. And I think a lot of the administrative type work over the next 5 years we'll master. We'll master it and it'll go away. But we're going to have people there to make decisions. Are we paying the claim? How much we paying? Why are we paying? Why are we not paying? So I do think that we're going to need a lot more folks that are going to be on the decision side versus the administrative side.
Well, I think that your characteristics don't change, right? We're still looking for people that can make good decisions, that are organized, that are customer-oriented, that have high work standards. So those sort of things don't change regardless of the technology. It's just, we want people to be versatile enough to be able to change along with the technology that comes.
I agree.
Yeah, so I think there's two aspects, or at least two aspects, but the leadership side of it doesn't change, right? I mean, it is about creating a shared vision. It's about motivating people. It's about helping them find the direction and going there. So there's going to be a lot of, leadership doesn't get replaced by technology. At the same time, I think there will be, the old days of, I started as an auto adjuster. I worked my way up to a property adjuster. Now I'm a casualty adjuster. Now I'm a supervisor. And now, 50 years later, now I'm the claims manager. That world may be changing, right? In a world that's a little bit more oriented around what is the data. People who have data skills, people who are, have more technical skills as, in understanding what is, more along the lines of the actual what is driving the experience. People who have more process skills and understanding where is that friction that I can take it out, right? Thinking about technology and redesigning that in a way, from a leadership standpoint, creating a vision that says we're going to remove challenges and friction in this way, right? And motivating and engaging people in that kind of a view. I think that's a skill that will be increasingly important, and you'll see more of that coming from chief claim officers and senior claims leaders. But I would agree also that at the end of the day, it's a loss, right? And losses are emotional things. Some things are more emotional than others, and emotions sometimes need to be managed, and people are much better at managing emotions currently than tools and technology. And maybe you're not emotionally invested in your black puffy coat, and so a 2-second payment is an acceptable payment for you, right? You don't want to talk to somebody. But if you're facing a total loss on a fire, I'm guessing you're a little more on your home, on your primary residence, or your business, your livelihood. My guess is you're a little more emotionally invested, right? And while there's a lot of tools and technology that will help expedite that and engage you and speed that up, at the same time, you got to work through that, and that's going to require some emotional intelligence on the folks, like you talked about, the right kind of person who can think about that, connect with the customer, create that experience. So it's a bit of both.
So do you guys think going forward that we will add members to our senior leadership teams that are outside our industry to help us manage some of this other stuff? Will that insight,
like a data analyst.
Will that or innovation people coming from the outside in the course of the next 2, 3, 5 years? Do you see that being key positions going forward in this industry? This is a pretty old school industry, to get to senior leadership teams, you're largely dependent on that experience, right?
Yeah, we're very slow to adopt change historically in the insurance industry. We've sort of created this created this problem ourselves with our own advertising. That we've changed consumer expectations. I mean, look at all the advertising that we do on TV as an industry. It's how fast we're going to process your claim and how how well we're going to do and make that a seamless process for you. 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. 10 years ago, 10 days was acceptable. Now it's, I saw a commercial just recently is, oh yeah, I have an accident, take a picture, go to sleep, and I have an estimate, right? You've seen that commercial. It's, we've changed expectations. So now we have to deliver on those expectations. And whether that's auto or home, that's different. You mentioned it though. We've as we remove some of the administrative jobs, and I agree we've worked hard in our operations to take what we call our highly skilled labor, our adjusters, our physical damage specialists that understand physical damage. How much does it cost to repair something? We want to take every administrative task we can off of that person because they're they're valuable.
Right.
And but you do start to have problems with career paths because that's probably how most of us, I suspect, around this table got in the industry. We started out at entry level and moved up. I often find it's interesting to talk when you're with a group of people in the insurance business, how many people actually thought that was their career path when they were coming, wherever they began, coming out of school, said, I want to go be an insurance adjuster. That's not too many people signed up for that. So things are changing, and technology will play a part in it. Over time.
I think, I agree. I mean, I'd say, Matt, you asked about, folks outside the industry. I would suggest that you see that already happening with the InsureTech space, right? I mean, a lot of these guys that are coming in are guys and individuals, men, women from outside of the industry who are coming in with disruptive backgrounds, deep pockets from venture capital and other places, and really challenging and rethinking things on its head, right? And so I think you see that. I think that it's also creates risk for them as well. I mean, the industry is still highly regulated, will be highly regulated. There's a lot of industry knowledge that that sometimes takes a little while to really understand. That's part of their advantage in terms of challenging it. It's part of their risk point by not understanding it. So they kind of dance that razor's edge, if you will. I do think that, and I know it's partly how we source ideas. We look outside of our industry. I mean, telemedicine has definitely influenced how we think about about virtualization of adjudication of claims, right? If you can have nurses triaging human life injuries, I promise you, we can triage property damage in a more remote manner, right? And so those are some of the outside industry areas where we've looked at folks that are doing things differently. And I know, for example, you guys sent some folks to CES, just to see what's happening more broadly out there. I think those kinds of places will continue to inform, senior leaders as it relates to how to think about the industry.
Yeah, it's probably easier for our side to do it than you guys as carriers, but I mean, we absolutely have had to do that to survive and stay up front, and look at logistics companies in the logistics sector and go to other conferences. We're going to go to Salesforce conference this year, a couple of HR conferences, just trying to get this holistic view of what's going on out there and ideas and what other people are doing. At the end of the day, what John and I do on this side is not a lot of different than other companies. We're a typical service company. We're in a very unique sector, but other people are doing it probably better and more efficient. So we have to look at it. It's a little bit more closed in on y'all's side, but I certainly think there's some opportunity out there, right?
Agreed.
Somebody mentioned that we're in a gold rush of technology, which I think is a unique term, but we talked about it in a prior podcast, which was, it's often not the first, guy that comes up with the technology that gets it right. It's usually the second or third or maybe even fourth generation of it. The guy that comes in and
that leverages the failures of somebody else.
Yeah, it says, that's a great idea. Let me just pull this one lever just a little bit and change the whole and gets it. So that's also the risk that you run when you're digging into those deep pockets to try to find that innovative spaces. The guy or gal sitting right next to you figures out that one thing that you missed, and so I know that's what we're all looking for all the time is what's the next.
It's out there.
It's there. It's somebody's. We're gonna have that moment where we sit around and say, how did we miss that? It's the it's the. I'll date it's the beta or the VHS or the right who's gonna survive.
Well, one of the things that we've learned from doing the podcast and from talking to a lot of people, both for our business and for the podcast, is this space, the InsureTech space, is enormous. You can't imagine. I'm talking about, and I don't think I'm wrong here, thousands of startups and companies who are playing in this space. Now they're at all ends of the insurance value chain, not just at claims. Claims is one piece of it, right? But they're all throughout. I'm talking about thousands of companies working diligently every day with, most with venture money, fueling them on disrupting the status quo. And that's been one of the interesting things that we've learned as we've gone through this, Lee and Matt and I, is that there's thousands of these companies. So, and even like Hover, you brought up Hover. Hover, I think, has done a great job and made a big impact thus far. But they started as a solution for the military business. That's who their first contracts were with. They pivoted from there. So I think that one thing we can be sure of is that there's going to be a lot going on in this space. Just who's the winners and losers is still to be written.
And it's exhausting keeping up with them because there's a bunch of them.
I think we're all kind of getting ahead of the technology in and of itself. You bring up there's thousands of companies. Absolutely. Everybody's running at this thing. They see the tremendous amount of money that's to be had. Somebody said earlier, it's been said multiple times, we're just not there yet, right? We're not there yet in a lot of ways. Because at some level, technology always looks for standardization, right? That's how you get efficient. That's how you get cheap, right? You're trying to standardize. It's difficult to find standardization. So right now, technology, the pieces that are successful are going after one problem, right? Here's a problem. Correct. Here's a solution. Oh, there's Correct. Another problem. There's another solution. The issue that you have with the insurance industry is it's all, it's regulated at a state level, right? Then you have the looming specter of, the black swan events that are what? Most people are thinking hurricanes, right? What about
earthquakes?
What about earthquakes? That one's coming. Oh, hey, but they're not covered, right? Earthquakes aren't covered. They got to be inspected. You're still going to have to inspect them. And then there's another side of the coin here. I'm pretty good friends with a number of public adjusters. They love the idea of technology because you've never been out there to look at it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of unintended consequences that I believe are coming. But getting back to the standardization thing, how do you standardize a policy? Because as soon as you do, that's a differentiator for somebody else. Now, you're just like them. Guess what? We're going to do something different. Now you just upset the apple cart again. So it's going to be very, very interesting. Are we going to get there? I think absolutely we're going to get there. At least we're going to get 90% there, right? And technology is going to solve most of the problems that we're struggling with now. At what point, though, and again, I bring it back to the human element, at what point do people just, ultimately say, it's just a little too creepy? I mean, I'm a self-professed conspiracy theorist, right?
Survivalist.
Yes, right. I don't have a bunker yet, but and everybody they're quick to say, well, it's the millennial, the younger kids, this is what they're used to. But I'm seeing things that are saying otherwise. They're saying, no, we're a little bit fed up with some of we want more human engagement. So it's going to be fun to watch and see what happens. I can't wait to see the new technology, the latest and greatest that really solves a lot of the problems. You talk about the repetitive motion issues, right? That constantly taking away more administrative work so that our skilled adjusters can do what they do. Mm-hmm. But I'm anxious to see the technologies that, keep me from having to strike a key. It's funny to say, carpal tunnel is one of the, it's a serious on-the-job injury, but at some point, the technology will catch up, and we're not going to sit there. We're not going to be constantly typing in file notes, or we're not going to be constantly entering in, coverage data in these files. It's going to be
like Dan said earlier, you were talking about, what happened at the turn of the century and how we're seeing a lot of those things coming up today. I think that timing plays a big role in this. And there's other maybe pieces of infrastructure that have to be put in place, like what the cloud enabled today, and that timing and one of the things that we've you said several times on the podcast is that things will probably change less in the next few years than we expect, but probably more in the next 10 years than we expect. And so I think that, as we bring this to a close today, does everybody agree with that? That the changes are probably further out than they are near term.
Yeah, so I believe that inherently, right? I mean, I think that there'll be a lot of interesting things that happen. Some will stick, some won't in the short term. I think it's hard today. I think you get caught up in the emotion of the excitement of the new and the shiny, and you project that as the new normal. It doesn't necessarily pan out quite as you anticipate in the short run, but you can't envision you can't envision the future, right? And it's in totality. I guess the only thing I would add there is and you talk about the timing and whatnot, the infrastructure. None of this none of the advances exist in a vacuum, right? They all the smartphone is enabled by fast over cell net wireless, right? All of these things exist with other things around them, and how those develop and change will also change how we think about what we're doing. I mean, just the concept of if you want to talk about private property ownership, whether vehicles are still owned by individuals in the future. I mean, those are questions that may change. Depending on how those questions get answered, may change the nature of our work substantially. Right? If all of a sudden, Ford doesn't sell vehicles but only runs a service, and every vehicle is on the road is owned by Ford, it gets damaged. They might not be calling an insurance adjuster to go take a look at it. They might just be having the thing come back to their own shop and take care of it themselves and be done with it, right? And balance sheets. I mean, balance sheets are changing, right? Balance sheets are much bigger, and the nature of losses for individuals, corporations are changing as well. And so I think you got people with a lot bigger balance sheets. They absorb losses in a different way. That changes the nature of the game as well. So I think all that exists in an ecosystem that right. will push, pull, yin, yang, and it makes it difficult to know what the future will ultimately look like. But I do agree with Mick. I mean, the long-term trajectory is clear. It's just when and how it actually looks.
It's a great example of the shared ride services. Just last week, Lyft opened up their own collision repair center, the first one out in California. Wow. So offering Lyft drivers discounted repairs and discounted services, and I think I don't want to get the statistic wrong. It was either 30 or they had a goal of either 30 or 60 repair shops they wanted to open up this calendar year. I think was the article.
Changes the game.
So it's a huge thing, and you flip that over to it's easy to envision shared services or shared rides, on the auto side, or autonomous vehicles that are owned by large manufacturers. The kind of the flip side of that on the homeowner side is rentals. I mean, there's a lot of people, Airbnb, things like that. A lot of shifting of is home ownership as important as what I think it is. I don't know that the next generation feels that way, mm-hmm. and that changes the dynamics quite a bit, whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Final comments, thoughts?
Thanks for having us, and thanks for talking about it. It's going to be interesting to see where we do go in 5 years and see what's out there.
So we're going to do this in 5 years, same place, same time. See if we're right or wrong.
Come back and
open the time capsule back up and see.
Sure, that's
podcast back.
That's a great idea. I still have a job.
We'll be able to meet via hologram.
Yeah, we're thinking about next year for PLRB. We're gonna do our presence is just gonna be virtual. We're gonna put video screens up, and you'll just want to talk to Rob Beller, press here, Matt Fatheree, press here, Paul Riolas, press here, and then we could just sit at our desks at home.
I'd like to see the data analytics on which one they press.
That's private, confidential.
Yeah.
You talk about all this stuff in the future, though. But you think back. I remember, thinking when we get to the year 2000 and the predictions for all the technology that was going to be there then, right? In the 80s and 90s, we said by now we'd be flying, George Jetson hovercrafts, and we're not there yet. I mean, that's what I don't understand. If somebody's listening out there, why are we working on autonomous cars? Skip that step, go right to the autonomous, George Jetson autonomous drone. We don't, no roads, no infrastructure.
The problem is the FAA would be involved in that.
That's
that
the
deal.
problem,
So,
But we don't,
I mean, it's to Dan's talk. It's the ecosystem, and it's a lot of other things that's out there that push us, right? 5G's coming. What does that do? Photos are probably going to be a thing of the past. We're going to be video and everything, right? And it's going to be an interesting world. So sure, we'll do this in 5 years. I'll be here.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. That was great.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really hope that you all enjoyed that as much as Matt and I did in doing it. And I encourage you to reach out to the people that you heard from on the episode. I know it might be a little hard to discern who was who, but we want to thank again Dan Moore from QBE, John Hall from Worley, Scott Sprague from Westfield, Pat Sinnard from Great American, Bo Helms from Shelter, Jill Thomas from NatGen Lender Services, and Mick Zondory from Kemper. And thank them for their time and their interest and being willing to join us for our little experiment that we did at PLRB. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on our next episode.